I'm so excited. Genevieve Collins, Director of Americans for Prosperity, Texas, is on this episode of The Crude Truth.
In 1901, at Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, the future of Texas changed dramatically as, like a fountain of fortune, thousands of barrels of oil burst from the earth towards the sky. Soon, Detroit would be cranking out Model Ts by the millions, and America was on the move, thanks to the black gold being produced in Texas. Now, more than a century later, the vehicles are different, but nothing else has truly changed. Sure, there may be many other alternative energy sources like wind and solar and electric. But let's be honest, America depends on oil and entrepreneurs, and if the USA is truly going to be independent, it has to know the crude truth.
This episode is brought to you by LFS Chemistry. We are committed to being good stewards of the environment. We are providing the tools so you can be too. NAPE Expo, where deals happen. Air Compressor Solutions. When everything is on the line, Air Compressor Solutions is the dependable choice to keep commercial business powered up. Sandstone Group. Exec Crew. Elevate your network, elevate your knowledge. Texas Star Alliance. Pecos Country Operating. Fueling our future.
Well, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of The Crude Truth. We're back here again in Austin, and it's just such a fitting place for my guest who I've always had on at the Dallas location. But she is here right now fighting a huge fight for what you would call school choice, which actually just was passed. I want to talk about that. She's also fighting on a few more bills. As I said in our intro, our guest today is the Director of Americans for Prosperity here in Texas, Genevieve Collins. Genevieve, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I have to say, my hands are just so congratulations.
Thank you.
You are, just your whole story and you, when are you due?
So I'm pregnant.
Yes.
I'm due July 4th. So I know, right? Only in God's timing would I be due on July 4th. But I'm like, our little son is going to be a patriot baby. He's going to come out, pew, pew, you know. My husband is like, oh God. But yeah, we're 8.5 months pregnant and on the downhill.
I just want to say this. We could do a whole episode about that. And so I just want to say again, congratulations. The people that know you are so happy for you. So congratulations. And I'm excited for you, but you've been kicking ass here here at the legislative here in Austin since January. Americans Prosperity has had their handful, getting across probably this session's biggest bill, if not for the entire session, at least up until now, school choice.
Yeah.
Before we go on to highlight all the victories, I really want to dive into school choice.
Great.
What does that mean? Like, do we now get to just go where we want or what?
So I would say school choice has been a 40-year crusade.
Yes.
In the state of Texas. And it's really kind of the last big Republican supermajority state that has not passed some form of students being able to go to the school that best fits their needs. Mm-hmm. Well, that has changed this year. The governor was really intentional last year around finding better candidates that support school choice and specifically support a program called Education Savings Accounts. It's basically like a financial tool that allows basically $10,000 to follow a student to the school that best meets their needs, i.e. the school of their choice.
Okay.
And so we have been involved at Americans for Prosperity since I started, which is 4.5 years ago. And my family has been involved in this for actually 5 generations, this policy.
Okay.
And which we can dive into tangentially or separately. But what we really did was ensure a couple big things. One, that every family has a voice and their voice matters.
Okay.
So with school choice and specifically what we passed on SB 2, Senate Bill 2, it's a universal education savings account. So it actually allows for your tax dollars to follow your child instead of your tax dollars just going directly to the school or the school district assigned to the student.
Okay.
So universal in statute means that over time, hopefully we can expand our program to be to have more students be able to pick the school of their choice. But from the jump, Texas has implemented into law the largest school choice program in American history.
Whoa.
So we funded $1 billion to create this program that will enable basically 100,000 students who are prioritized in eligibility like this. Students with disabilities, students in low-income families, which are families $62,000 or that make $62,500 or less for a family of four, and the middle-income families, which are about $150,000 for a family of four.
Okay.
It prioritizes those students.
Okay.
And 100,000 of those kids are going to be able to get, and homeschool students, I apologize. And 100,000 students will be able to choose the school that best meets their needs starting school year 2026.
So are they going to have to obviously apply to be one of these 100,000?
Yeah. So the comptroller, which is basically our state's chief financial officer, is going to administer the program. So if a parent has to apply for their child, and we're still in the rule-making process. We passed the bill, but now there's a whole lot of details that need to be sorted out.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So the comptroller is going to administer the program, but if I'm your parent, I will apply for you and I will have a menu of options to choose from. So I can direct the dollars that the comptroller will send on my behalf to private school, public school, charter school, all sorts of different accredited schools. Most will start off as private schools. We'll get like Catholic schools or, there's thousands of private schools around the state of Texas. And the average tuition for a private school across the state of Texas is about $8,000.
Yeah.
But this program with an education savings account will pay for tuition, tutoring, behavioral therapy. So students with special needs.
Oh, that's big.
Can have up to $30,000 to be able to pay for their needs. So behavioral therapies or any type of therapies, uniforms, transportation, curriculum for homeschool. So it's really an all-encompassing bill that I like to say really puts the child at the center of the conversation, which is exactly what education should be.
Right.
We should be funding students and not systems. And when we are solely focused on doing what's best for children, the outcomes always follow, and children soar and their futures soar.
Do you think this will motivate school districts to level up?
That's the hope. That's what we've seen. So fortunately, we have historical data from a number of other states.
Okay.
Florida passed school choice 25 years ago.
Okay.
So under Governor Jeb Bush, they were the first state to really implement school choice.
Okay.
Now, there's 32 other states that have implemented some form of school choice since 2000, even including Maine or, what you would consider some of the other blue states. They still have some forms of school choice. Texas now joins their ranks. And what we see is that when there's more education entrepreneurs, folks that open schools, folks that are really focused on a specific niche in maybe it's career training and CTE education, or focusing on agriculture, focusing on oil and gas, or focusing on, STEM. Yeah. We see that competition is a good thing, and that the school districts actually end up improving as well because they're competing for the same student, and no longer are you competing for dollars, which is kind of what the equation has been. You're competing for those dollars. Now you're competing to give that child the best education. Right.
No, we could definitely go into, the actual education part, but that is very neat that if a child has already an idea of what they want to do, if that school district's got, the STEM, the science and technology part down, then hey, they probably want to go there.
Right.
Which is really no different than college, right? It's like, I think my youngest brother had a full ride to a small school cycling, but they didn't have no engineering. And it was like, well, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
And so that was school choice.
There you go.
Yeah.
Why can we have it in college, but we can't have it
Right.
in our K through 12 environment?
Yes.
So that's no longer a barrier here in Texas.
Now, you also said this is going to also, so this $10,000 credit, it will also go to the private schools.
So it does go to private schools. It's not going directly to public schools. It's going to private schools, charter schools, micro schools, any other type of accredited school in the state of Texas. So it's not just public schools.
It's not just, so you can't go from one school district to another one.
You could.
You could, but you can go from public school to private school with this.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay,
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's pretty neat.
It is. And what's been really fun is it's been a long slog, to be honest, here in the Capitol. But what's been really fun is to see how many members of the legislature have really grown to understand the concept of school choice and have really taken it on as how do we empower families and empower children?
Right.
So just to kind of set some context, from a policy perspective, in 2021, there were 29 state reps who voted for school choice.
Okay.
So that's 4 years ago now.
All right.
So of 150
I was
members,
about to say 150, yeah.
29 voted for school choice. In 2023, that number went from 29 yes votes to 65 yes votes. Well, in order to pass the bill, you have to have 76 votes. That's half of the legislature. So the bill still failed.
Right.
But that's a huge jump, 29 to 65. Well, now 2023, we had 65 to 2025. We had 86 yes votes. And watching the legislature become more educated and engaged, working with our group like Americans for Prosperity and some of our partners like the Texas Public Policy Foundation, we really connected legislators with people in their communities.
Okay.
We made the issue personal because it is about kids. It's about families.
Right.
And helping them see that this is not a false choice of choosing, it's either public schools versus private schools. It's not about that.
Yeah.
It's about what's in the best interest of the child. And then how do we make sure that that child is successful?
Yeah.
Regardless of the four walls with which a student is within.
Right.
And it was, we had a lot of battles.
Right.
But, from the political side, we had to, I would kindly say forcibly retire some obstinate legislators in 2024. They lost their seats to pro-school choice candidates. And then help make sure that the legislature this year that they kind of stayed rallied together. Because keeping 86, kittens in the same caboodle is not an easy thing.
Right, right. And, you guys at Americans for Prosperity's ground game on that side of things, and that's not what I even want to talk about today, is no joke.
Thank you.
For those out there, they're out there pounding the streets like up until election day, really trying to get the candidates that they support, across the finish line.
Yeah.
So you guys have been on a winning, I'm going to call it streak, but it's knock on wood. But, Genevieve, I want to do it to highlight you and the success since you've been there. So 2 years ago, y'all got about 10 bills passed. And last time, if I recall, we were talking at a pre-meeting, it was in healthcare was the big one last time. And you were sitting right next to Greg Abbott. That was huge. And now you've done school choice, which again, I don't keep up as much as I should. I call you if I got a problem, or if I got a question, right? But I don't know if anything else that's going to be that big this year. And so that being said, can you just highlight some of the things that y'all did get over the finish line in 2023's session, just to highlight them?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we got a bunch done on property tax relief. Mm-hmm. So the legislature passed an $18 billion, that's billion with a B, $18 billion property tax relief package, which was supposed to help lower the cost of property taxes for Texans. That's a really transformative policy.
Yes.
Right. It increased our homestead exemption while decreasing the caps or putting caps on what appraisal districts can increase our property taxes on. So that was a big one. We also passed price transparency bills, a number of healthcare price transparency bills. Why do you go to a restaurant and you can see the prices for a steak and potatoes, but you go to your doctor and you don't know how much a knee surgery is going to cost? Why is that?
No.
Or an MRI? So patients are purposefully uninformed on pricing, and therefore they cannot shop to find a price that best meets their needs while also being able to get the services and the care that they need.
Right.
So those are two examples. What else did we get done? We supported a bunch of border policy in 2023.
That's right.
That was a crazy time. How much the world has changed in 1 year, or let me rephrase, in 6 months on border policy.
Is it not crazy?
Yeah, it is crazy.
I mean, I had a chance to have on a George P. Bush, like right at Trumpers' 100 days.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind.
Yeah.
The whole thing. I mean, that's a whole other, again, that's another podcast.
That's a whole other
thing right there. But you guys were right there. You were on the border 2 years ago.
We were.
Yes, you were.
We were doing border tours. We were bringing people from all across the country to see the Rio Grande River.
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh my gosh, can I put my feet in it?" And I'm like, "I mean, you can. I wouldn't, but you know." But anyways, we did a lot on we touch all taxpayer issues, and that's kind of what I like to say is like Americans for Prosperity. When you look at us as an organization, we're not just a grassroots organization. We're a policy organization that focuses on protecting the taxpayer and being their champion. I would say we had a great session, and I can't even remember all the stuff that we did in 2023.
I know.
But this year, I think we're going to have the most transformational session for the state of Texas that I have ever seen.
Well, okay, let's talk about that. You mentioned that you did some great things with property taxes back in 23, but y'all are working on even more for this session. What else are you working on?
Okay, so there's this big belief. I got to break this down here.
I thought you were about to say a big, beautiful bill.
No, unfortunately. But there's this belief that there's two kinds of ways you can attack property taxes.
Okay.
One is through relief and one is through reform. Okay, so relief is the legislature appropriating $18 billion to pay down your property taxes. Reform is actually looking at all of the little financial tools that can be manipulated at a state or local level and say that increase your taxes. So how do we look at something like certificates of obligation? I didn't even know what this was until like 2 years ago, but this is a financial tool that every city or county has at their disposal. It's for emergency purposes that they can pass a big package of debt over to fund whatever they need to cure an emergency situation. Think of like hurricane damage, tornado damage, things like that.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Okay.
But what's actually happening across cities, and cities like El Paso, for example, is that the county commissioners are passing over $1.2 billion worth of non-voter approved debt to build stadiums, to build a water park, to expand a hospital. Well, all of those could be good. They're not necessarily emergency situations. And then if you think about that, if you think about El Paso, where the median income is about $55,000 per family. So the people that can afford these tax increases the least are getting taxed more, and they don't even have a say in their taxation. I think we fought a war about no taxation without representation. And if you cannot vote on these various types of taxes, that's not how our country is set up.
Oh my gosh.
And that's happening across the state. And that's just one example. Bonds, Bond elections happen all the time. They're usually, billion-dollar packages. Nowadays. And I mean, to read it, you need, you need a law degree and a master's and professorship in law in order to understand what the heck you're even voting on.
Yes. I think I almost called you last about a bond. I was like, is this a good bond or a bad bond, the way that they're written?
Well, what bonds are doing, it's not that they're bad.
Well, no,
right?
well, I'm sorry.
No.
Do I support this bond or not?
No.
I'm not asking you if I support. Explain it to me.
Yeah. Well, no, but it's the fact that bonds are passing on more debt to the constituents. Mm-hmm. And that debt goes to increasing your property taxes. Mm-hmm. So reform is really about looking at all of these different tools, tax anticipation notes, certificates of obligation, bond elections, making sure that in the language of a bond, it says this is a tax increase.
Yes.
No one knows. Okay. And so reform is really about making sure that those financial tools are appropriately used and are not, and that constituents, I almost said consumers, that constituents are not always having their taxes increased. Right. Especially when the state's trying to decrease their taxes with relief, but that relief is not realized in the tax bill.
Well, you talk about.
I know that was really wonky.
No, but it helps, because obviously people are going to always argue. We've touched on several things today, and I just want to make this point to everybody out there that it's a whole podcast on its own. Property tax is a whole podcast right on its own. But if we can figure out ways to lower it, because it does continue to go up.
Right.
But also what it sounds like we're doing, and especially at Americans for Prosperity, is we are using our surplus as the best we can. We had another huge surplus again. Is that correct?
That is.
And are you seeing, and I'm just kind of coming out of left field, are you seeing us use that surplus for pretty good reasons and things like that as we continue on this legislation session?
So I have a bit of a hot take.
Oh, come on, bring it on.
We have a $24 billion surplus.
That's right.
Billion with a B.
Oil and gas paid $24 billion in taxes last year.
Correct.
So just throwing that out. Okay.
Yeah. So my personal perspective is that if we continue to have these incredibly large surpluses, we're overtaxing our state. We're overtaxing our citizens and we're overtaxing our businesses.
Ooh.
I know, right? A little bit of a hot take, but if we're really being honest about truth and taxation, great, we have a surplus. We should we celebrate that as if it's a good thing. But the reality is we are overtaxing our citizens and certainly overtaxing the oil and gas industry and who pays for all of it, no less. But I think that we need to really recalibrate our state budget to tax what's appropriate, not just continually tax our citizens.
Man, okay. Look at that hot take. I mean, you're absolutely
your face
right.
is like, wow, was not expecting that.
I love it, but it makes sense. I mean, it really, really does. With you guys, a session's supposed to end when?
June 2nd.
June 2nd.
Can't get here soon enough.
So are they thinking it's going to go special sessions in the
No,
summer?
actually, I don't think that everything that I've been hearing, and I work directly with a bunch of people in the governor's team and the speaker's team, lieutenant governor's team, the three of them, we call them the big three here colloquially. They have breakfast once or twice a week. That has never happened since I've been involved in politics. They have breakfast at the governor's mansion every Wednesday, and they are moving through the agenda. In my opinion, I wish we could have moved a little faster, but that's because I also have no patience and I have one speed, which is go.
Yes.
But we're moving through very quickly, and I think we still have a lot to get done. Americans for Prosperity, we're working on a bunch of housing policy. We've got two big transformative healthcare bills up this week.
Yes, let's talk about those. Yes, let's talk about the veteran healthcare bill. That blew my mind. What are you trying to actually get legalized in Texas?
So Chairman James Frank, he's from Wichita Falls. He has a bill, House Bill 897. And his bill says that if you are a veteran or were in the military and practiced medicine in the military on our service members, you should be able to legally be in medicine here, practice medicine in the state of Texas.
Right.
So you're telling me that right now, a combat veteran or a doctor who, who was a military, who was a doctor in the Army, for example, who was on the battlefield taking care of our soldiers, that experience does not equate to enough to get you to be able to practice in the state of Texas.
I can't believe that.
Isn't that bananas?
That is, yeah.
So so this bill changes the licensing requirements and allows our veterans, our military folks to be able to get out of the military and immediately practice medicine.
That again, another whole episode, but I mean, that just makes no sense. Like, okay, so I bet there'd be one heck of an ER doctor or emergency room doctor because of this and that, and oh man, and you got to have
it's a no-brainer.
Nerves of steel. My son he cut his eyebrow.
Okay.
And the lady that sewed him up while he's there, it was tough. But we had to hold him down and hold his head, but she just nerves of steel as if nothing's going on. And that's what I picture a military doctor would be like too. MASH and hurry up, just give me that, right? But I cannot believe that you're having to change the verbiage or a law to allow that to happen.
I can't either.
And that just shows where we are with our veterans. I mean, again, another episode, but so that's huge.
That is. So really excited. That's already made its way to the governor's desk.
Okay.
And that's just going to be a real celebration. And I think a recognition of our veterans and their sacrifices and honoring what they have done and how they practiced serving our country.
Yes, yes. Oh, that's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
That'll definitely be a good one. On a national front, are y'all looking at anything right now?
At the federal level, we are very focused on helping Congress pass the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Yes.
Reauthorize passing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Good news, it's making its way through the House. It's gone through all sorts of different iterations. I think that the bill will go to the Senate this week. But basically, our point of view is that the 2017 Trump tax cuts were a great thing for America. Yeah. It not only lowered taxes across every income level, it spurred a tremendous amount of economic growth. It enhanced our business sector, our corporate sector, by giving them certainty and tax, advantages that allowed them to go hire more people and increase employment. So we see that as a net positive thing. I recall the roaring economy, right? Up until the pandemic, which was a wild thing that we've all experienced, global shared experience. But up until then, our economy was growing. GDP was the highest it had been in 20 years. Yeah. So that's a net good thing for America. Then we had transitioned to a different president. And under the Biden policies, we had soaring inflation. We've had unbelievable spending, what I would call reckless spending on a lot of subsidized industries. So our point of view at Americans for Prosperity, the government shouldn't be tipping their hand or putting their thumb on the scale for which industries are winners and losers. Yeah. That's for the market to decide. We don't need to subsidize a ton of green energy practices. Texas has already proved that model works. We don't need to subsidize any extra. Yeah. Right? So anyways, all that being said, we need to strip out a bunch of those bad era monetary and tax policies. And so we're really focused on getting the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act reauthorized, and that will actually, I think, help create more market certainty as we kind of move out of what is going on with all of the tariffs and all of that kind of economic uncertainty. This will just create some much better market certainty for businesses for the next 10 years.
Holy cow. You are on it. I mean, You guys with Americans for Prosperity, as Texas is energy dominant, America's energy secure, right?
Look at you.
And I know I thought about that earlier. I was like, I can't really use that for this episode, the tagline. But you continue to truly allow Texas to be the number one state, and then the rest of America follows.
I mean, I know that your listeners are spread all over the country, but as a 7th generation Texan, I have to be honest. I know that there's 49 other states, but I only think that one really matters.
Well, it's fun. I get some people sometimes that I know, and I'm like, oh, I'm just here in the great state of Texas. I'm like, I can't call Illinois great. I'm like, well, I mean, you could.
Yeah. I'd like to say that I'm consistently annoying like every other Texan. I believe that Texas should be the crown jewel of our country. It needs to be the beacon of light, the beacon of freedom, the place where opportunity comes to thrive and where prosperity can be for anybody. Right. And I think that that's in the DNA of our state. Yeah. It's, I've been to almost every state. I've not felt that when I was in Nebraska, for example. No offense to people in Nebraska, but I feel like Texas, it's so big. We have 30 million people. We're only going to continue to grow. Every other state needs a state to look towards. Yeah. And I think that for us, like Texas will be the 7th largest economy. We're going to have our own stock exchange starting next year. We have a thriving energy sector. We have a thriving technology sector. We have more financial services jobs in Texas than New York City.
That's right, we do.
So we need Texas to work. The country needs Texas to work, and our allies and countries around the world need Texas to work too.
Golly. Well, Genevieve, I cannot thank you again. I know, you being 8.5 months and good luck, because as the day we record, you're testifying today.
Yes.
Give them hell.
I will, I promise.
For those out there who want to get involved, because before I wrap up, I want to say this, that your all's grassroots last year during the election period is what helped make this session go very smooth.
Thank you.
So for those out there that want to help make that change, want to help make a difference, how do they get in contact with Americans for Prosperity and get involved? Yeah.
So our website is called freedomisbigger.com. freedomisbigger.com. On our website, you can sign up to become an ambassador and to join our movement. You can sign petitions. This is a really big and key component of how we work here in Austin. We bring petitions from across the state that we can identify, your voice with your specific legislator and connect you. They need to know at scale what their community feels. You can sign a petition on energy, on property tax reform, on healthcare, on education, on immigration and border security. So please go sign a petition. We don't sell your information or anything like that. But we do make sure that your legislators know who you are and that you care. Yeah. Sometimes they just are so disconnected from their own communities that I like to say, we will help bring your community to you, Mr. or Miss Legislator. So go to our website, freedomisbigger.com. Follow us on Twitter at TexasAFP. Follow me on Twitter at GCollinsTX.
Well, Genevieve, thank you so much. I'm so glad we were able to do this episode here in Austin.
Thank you.
And good luck. And I'll have to hopefully see you again sooner than later.
Indeed.
And to all listeners out there, thank you as always. If you got any questions for Genevieve or the team at Americans for Prosperity, let me know. Reach out to them. They're making a positive impact and allowing Texas to only continue to prosper. We'll see you again. Thank you.
Again, the Crude Truth would like to thank today's sponsors: LFS Chemistry, NAPE Expo, Air Compressor Solutions, Sandstone Group, Exec Crew, Texas Star Alliance, Pecos Country Operating, and Real News Communication Network.
The easiest way to start your own podcast and TV show? Real News Communications Network.
Stand out from your competition. Produce streams of high-quality social media content. Become a thought leader in your industry. With RNCN, you get to be the host. We handle everything else. Tour one of our 3 locations in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Colony. Call 972-402-6333 or visit launchashow.com to find out more.